Hey guys, welcome back to the Record Room. I'm of course your host Tony Giles, TG, and on this week's episode I'm going to follow on from last week's episode and talk about some of the recent bits and pieces that have come into the Record Room that have helped me kind of fill some gaps in some collections. Now, a lot of this stuff actually came from one seller based in the US. This is all pretty much UK released stuff, but he had bought all of this stuff, so I'm very happy about that because I was able to fill quite a few holes from one seller, which I love being able to do. I love being able to do multiple purchases. And for those of you out there that aren't fans of black metal, you may want to skip this episode because it is pretty much just entirely black metal. When I say pretty much, I mean it 100% is just black metal. But for those of you that are still watching, first item is a record. This has actually been reissued recently by Death Prayer Records. But what I've got here, this is the first pressing of the Revenant Marquis and Lamp of Murmuur split, which I love the music on this. I actually have this, I believe I have it on CD. I do have the reissue. And I have it on cassette as well, but I was missing that first pressing. And you know, those of you out there, collectors like me, that first press magic, I don't know what it is. I cannot explain it, but first press magic is a thing. I wholly believe in first press magic. And there we go. You got the Revenant Marquis on one side and Lamp of Murmuur on the other side. And I believe this has actually been reissued on cassette and vinyl. And I think you can still get the cassette. I want to say you can still get the cassette or the LP. Check out Death Prayer Records on Bandcamp. That's where you can get all of this stuff. I'm pretty sure that one is still available. And we'll do one other LP before I move on to tapes, because it's been a good week for tapes, let me just say that. So what I have here, I'm not quite sure how this works in the hierarchy of discographies, because what some people may consider an album is actually an EP and vice versa. But this here, this is, I think this is the 6th release from Lamp of Murmuur, an artist I've spoken about many times on this channel. This is the Burning Spears of Crimson Agony, which was, I believe this is the one that came out shortly before Air of Ecliptical Romanticism. But there you go, this is the release that dropped before that. And Black and Green have actually, I believe they've reissued this a couple of times themselves. And although I do own this, I did not own the red vinyl version. As far as I know, there is no difference between the pressings. I believe there's a red vinyl version, a black vinyl version, and a white vinyl version. In fact, I may even have one or two of them here. So let's have a look. Yeah, there we go. So there you go. The other versions, we've got the black vinyl version. There we go. Try and get it out of the light. And we also have the white vinyl version. So there you go, all three versions. Now, just to prove how sick in the head I really am, 3 versions of the same record. So there you go. Can't listen to all 3 of them at once, but there you go. That's the collector bug in me, as I'm sure there are many of you out there that also have the same thing. So I know I'm talking to the right kind of people. And speaking of Lamp of Murmuur and the Burning Spears of Crimson Agony, I also have the, I believe this is the first press cassette, which this one came on. It's a white shell. And I think there are different shells for this. I'm not entirely sure. Cassettes, I do collect the cassettes. I don't pay as much attention to cassette collecting as I probably should, because I know I've actually ended up buying doubles that have cost me decent money. But yeah, I have this on cassette as well now, and I think for the time being we'll stick with Lamp of Murmuur. And talking about not really paying attention to what you have, which is kind of criminal, especially because there are only 90 copies of this available or made. I actually ended up with 2 copies of Chasing the Path of the Hidden Master. These are exactly the same. They're both first press cassette, or first cassette pressings of this album. And yeah, this is me not paying attention, not filling in my Discogs when I should, and just thinking, oh, well, I need that, rather than actually checking. But they're both identical. So yeah, if anyone's looking for this and you know, has anything they want to trade, hit me up. But there you go, that's the first press of the Chasing the Path of the Hidden Master cassettes. One of them I've had for a little while, the other one just arrived. And last but not least, the first pressing cassette release of Air of Ecliptical Romanticism from Lamp of Murmuur. This is such a great modern black metal album, such a great album. The album that he's released subsequent to this, Punishment and Submission, is it? Or Submission and Punishment? Punishment and Submission, I think it is. Submission and Slavery. Submission and Slavery, yeah. See, I don't know, there are too many albums. It's a fantastic album in its own right, but it does kind of veer a little bit away from the rougher sounding black metal. There's a lot of 80s influence on that. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic, don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore it, but this album here, this is where it's at for me. I absolutely love this album, and when it comes to the vinyl version of this, I am only missing a test press. So yeah, which just goes to show it's the sickness. I'll do a Lamp of Murmuur breakdown one day of everything I have, and we'll go from there. And next up is an artist, or a few releases I want to talk about from a UK artist that I've absolutely fallen in love with. And to be honest, I'd never listened to their music before, up until May of this year, when I actually went to see Lamp of Murmuur's first UK show. One of the support bands at the event was the group, even though it's one man that writes and does everything when they play live, it's a full group, the Sun's Journey Through the Night, who are actually based not a million miles away from me here in Birmingham. So yeah, I kind of have a little bit of pride here, a little bit of like a homegrown passion for this guy. Calls himself No One. A lot of mysticism and you know, backstory behind the group, which I absolutely love. They have a live show coming up. Well, they have 2 live shows, one in Birmingham and one in London, coming up at the end of the year. And I have this stuff digitally. I have some of it on vinyl, or the vinyl releases that have been released, but actually getting the original cassettes, you know, again, part of that sick collector mentality. But we've got here The Sun's Journey Through the Night, veiled by the Shroud of Grief and Misery. Again, these are all released in super low quantities. This one is actually on the Gems label, who do some pretty awesome stuff. You've actually got Eternal Black Transmissions here, and this was actually released by Tom, my good buddy over at Repose Records. So there's that. This one is also on vinyl as well. This one here, this, I believe, yeah, this one here, this is the first demo. So very happy to have this one in the collection. I think this is the second pressing, comes on a white shell with black paint speckles. And then the last release, longer than one track, the latest release, or the last release, was a single song, which is fantastic, but it's a single song. And the last release was Demo 2, or the last full release, I should say. And this one comes a couple of different ways. This one though is on an orange shell. So there you go. So I was able to fill in some gaps in my Sun's Journey Through the Light collection, which I'm so thrilled with, and being able to support. I know I'm buying these off the aftermarket. That's I understand that the funds aren't going directly to the artists, but having somebody talking about, posting about, showing this stuff, I feel it's good for the black metal community, especially those based in the UK or that are working and trying to do stuff inside the UK. The UK black metal scene is absolutely thriving at the moment. There are tons of great bands out there. releasing some really good music, either themselves through Bandcamp or through labels like Repos or Death Cult, you know, or Death Prayer rather. It's just a great time to be a fan of modern era black metal, especially if you're based in the UK. I know the US has an amazing scene, and I know there are great scenes all over the world. Europe has a fantastic scene. But being from the UK and being a fan of this stuff for 20 plus years now, it's great to know that the flame is still alive. People are still out there, they're talking about this stuff and they're posting about this stuff. So there you go for this week's episode. I promise on next week's episode I'll talk about something other than black metal. Maybe. But for now, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please do consider subscribing to the channel. But for now, stay gold and spin those blackest circles.